It's more than 24 hours since yesterday's terror attack, and still the shock is raw. But as we struggle to come to terms with what happened, I'm being consumed by a different emotion. My shock is being replaced by an anger so fierce, so visceral, it actually hurts. And I don't think I'm alone. People are angry that one lone lunatic could have caused so much carnage, so much pain. They're angry at being told that we must all just get on and live our lives as normal and not let terrorism change or divide us. Tell that to Keith Palmer's devastated family. Tell it to those catastrophically injured survivors and the people who love them. Their lives have been changed forever, and we are letting them down if we as a society don't change too. I thank God for our police yesterday. I thank God they were armed and able to take out this murderer before he hurt and killed even more people. I'm grateful the instinct of these officers was to run at the danger, not away from it, because God knows every time a copper fires a gun these days, there's an outcry, an inquiry, and his career is on the line. But in a few hellish minutes yesterday, the justification for a bigger, better funded, better armed police force was writ large in the blood of the dead and dying. Make no mistake, what happened at Westminster was an act of war. So I don't want to be told not to be angry, not to be afraid, that the terrorists won't break us. I want us to break them. And I want the people on the front line of this war to be given whatever they say they need to fight it. Oh, God.
I don't even know how to respond to that, Carol. This was a lone lunatic. You said that yourself.
This was a guy who was being investigated for terrorism, for vicious acts of terrorism.
Let's get this right. He was under surveillance
10
years ago, and he was not under
justifying him.
No, we're not. And he was not under investigation currently, and he was on the peripheries. You cannot say that.
But he tried to kill somebody. But how can you say he's lone?
That's not the argument. The argument is our security services have been doing a fantastic job. Think about this. We have not had another attack since 7/7.
12 foiled attacks.
12 foiled attacks.
This was an Islamist-inspired act. Why weren't people
by one lone madman?
This guy's living on his own and he doesn't have contact with anybody.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
Well, it'll be interesting to find out.
Because I can assure you, if it was what you're suggesting, it would have been far worse. And you yourself have said it could have been far worse. And the fact that it wasn't is because our security services have been doing a fantastic job.
We know they've done a fantastic job.
No, you have to define an act of war, Carol.
Do you know that at any one time there are 500 operations?
No, wait. In your cue, you said this was an act of war.
Somebody stabbing an unarmed policeman on our streets.
That's an act of war.
Could that not be a random criminal act?
You guys do know, don't you? You do know that there are 500 the security service ongoing investigations that they have foiled so many, so that we are under attack. You don't think this is a war?
Working. What they're doing is working.
Well, it didn't work yesterday,
because this is one man. The point is,
do you seriously believe?
The point is, our security services, Carol, are doing such a fantastic job, which is why they have been able to foil the big orchestrated terror attacks.
The terrorist has been trying to hurt us for a very long time.
Arming police would not stop what happened yesterday. No way. How was it going to stop what happened yesterday?
It really disturbs me when I hear you speaking like that, Carol, for a number of reasons. One, speaking about an act of war. One reason is that have we learned nothing from what's happened? Because having a warlike mentality has not protected us from other attacks. I think all of us around this table want the same thing. We want to be safe. We want to see no more killings like this on our streets. That's what we all want. I don't see how the kind of reaction you're having... Did you think that the stabbing of Jo Cox, the serving MP, did you describe that as an act of war?
No.
Well, I can't think of a more serious threat to what we stand for as a country.
We've got to just stop, because it's quite an important fact. While I don't agree with you saying an act of war, let's just remind everybody that Islamic State has released a statement calling the attacker a soldier of Islam and suggesting he was inspired by their call to attack coalition states.
But also, all these lone wolves you are talking about, they're the ones the Islamic State love. They actually say that when a lone person commits an act of terrorism like this, it is as dear to them as whatever they're doing in Syria.
My point is, your suggestions won't prevent that. Your suggestions of arming police,
my suggestions
it's not going to prevent a lone.
Between us and Islamists.
It's not going to prevent a lone wolf. It's not. Tell me how the police being armed would have stopped that man driving into those people.
My whole point isn't about the police being armed.
For a start, that's kind of what you said in your
Keith
intro.
Palmer might still be alive if he'd been armed yesterday. He wasn't armed. So yes. And I think you'll find, I think Norman Brennan, the guy who used to be former Transport Police, he's got something to say here about our police being armed.
One of the biggest concerns I've got is that in London, it is the best protected place probably in the world, comparable to Manhattan in New York, where I've been to many times. What I'm concerned about is anyone that may wish to attack us again, and I'm sure it will happen. We predicted this would happen. What about all the other major cities, where sometimes armed backup could be 10 or 20 minutes away? Now, it's all right London being well protected, and I think this will certainly make many police officers do not want to be armed, that will now reconsider wanting to be armed, and I think that will be one of the priorities for the Metropolitan Commission and the Home Secretary.
That's an interesting point, Nick, isn't it?
You said that give the police whatever they need. I mean, looking at those men and women who poured into Palace of Westminster, quite rightly, they had every bit of kit, and I applaud that. I'm not saying that's... Yeah. What else do you want to give them?
But as he says as well, that they are crack squads. Not every officer is armed in the way they are. And Norman Brennan was talking particularly about outside London, where there are nowhere near as many armed police as we have here.
Carol, as we know in America, everyone's armed to the teeth. That didn't prevent 9/11.
No, it didn't.
A year to the day yesterday, the fact that in Belgium and Brussels the police are armed did not prevent the attack on Zaventem and the other bits of Brussels. Yeah. It did not prevent the lorry attack in Nice, where the French policemen are armed. We don't have armed policemen. I think it makes us a better and safer country.
Can I just read you a quote?
Can I just read you a quote
from Ken Marsh? Can I just read you a quote from Ken Marsh, the MPF chairman? He says, if you take the lorry in Nice, for example, they're driven to crowds of people. My cops are not armed, and they would not have been able to respond like the French police did. So what he's saying is, although many people were killed there would probably have been more had the police not been armed.
He wasn't stopped by armed policemen in Nice.
This is the MPF chairman saying that his officers would not be able to respond in the same way as the ones in New
That's the risk we live with.
I want to agree with you about something. The thing I agree with you about, I think, is that we need to invest in our police service. And I think that cuts to policing is something that we should all be doubly re-questioning. Yeah. I thought it was very interesting to hear people who have had operational experience of policing talk about the fact that what really matters in a situation like this is not having more armed police, it's having community policing. Yeah. It's about building trust. Because the thing is, we're facing these lone attacks. Just listen to me. We're facing these lone attacks, Carol. They don't leave a trace, but there are people in communities who know these people, who notice when people are acting strangely, who, if they had a relationship of trust with the kind of bobbies we used to have on the beat that we said hello to every day, would be more likely to report something they would now to phone up Scotland Yard or some phone number.
There are communities in Birmingham where this guy lived and where he was arrested.
It's acknowledged that we have cut community policing, and that is one of the biggest threats to that kind of relationship of trust.
I think we should have a look at what Theresa May had to say on this in terms of the commitments that she's planning.
Following the 2015 Strategic Defence and Security Review, we protected the police budgets for counter-terrorism and committed to increase cross-government spending on counter-terrorism by 30% in real terms over the course of this Parliament. And over the next 5 years, we will invest an extra £2.5 billion in building our global security and intelligence network, employing over 1,900 additional staff at MI5, MI6 and GCHQ, and more than doubling our global network of counter-terrorism experts, working with priority countries across Europe, the Middle East, Africa and Asia.
So what else do you want?
Do you think she wouldn't be doing that if she didn't think that we were at war with Islamist terrorists? Do you think they would be putting that kind of money into counter-terrorism if there wasn't a problem?
My point is, she's doing what's necessary, so I don't understand what
you're saying.
Saying that there needs to be more than that. What else?
You guys were just saying it wasn't necessary. I'm saying it absolutely is necessary. The cops have to be given exactly what they need.
We were saying the extras that you're asking for in terms of arming our police isn't going to help.
But Carol, how can we be at war with terrorism? You're sounding like George W. Bush. How could we're
not good.
No, I'm glad you see that point I'm making. We have to. I think it was underscore Rachel's point, and it's interesting. Everyone keeps saying it's a lone wolf. It's a lone wolf. You actually look back at the perpetrators of the Nice and Berlin attack. Actually, they had informers who helped them. So we don't know, and it's very, very early days, and it may be weeks before we actually know the full truth. But what we have is a random, horrific, hideous, criminal act that is not as if, thank the Lord, this is a pattern that we see played out on the streets of...
But it is part of a pattern, Nick. It is part of a pattern that we're seeing all over Europe.
We're going to leave that there.